Welcome back. We're moving forward into Unit B. So in Unit B, we're going to be talking about the roles and the processes. How do teams work? What are the parts in the process that the team actually goes through to become a successful high-producing team? So you may have heard about this before. If you have, great. It's good review. If you haven't, then it's really good information as we talk about the group forming process. The first step of that is forming. Forming means who's going to be on my group, who's going to be on my team. So sometimes those are assigned, or sometimes you get to pick those members, but it's picking the members that will be there for your team. The second is storming. This is where the team members learn to work together. Frequently in this stage, you're going to have some conflict. That's normal. People are going to want to assert their opinion or their ideas, and sometimes it's just scheduling conflicts. Somebody likes to work on Tuesday, somebody else wants to work on Wednesday. Somebody wants to work in this office, somebody wants to work in that office. So you got to kind of work through that in storming. And you need to let the team work through those struggles together rather than being afraid of those struggles or those conflicts. Part of that is the strengthening and working through and going, okay, we all got to find a solution together. How can we commit to that? As opposed to dictating what that will be. So that's the storming part where we learn to work together. We learn to respect each other and we learn to find a flow, which will bring us to norming, which is where we find the norm. This is how our team is going to work. This is what it does. This is how we're going to get together. We get together on Tuesday afternoons for 3 hours in this location, whatever that is. So finding that norming place so we can get comfortable with that group and know what to expect from it. From there, we get to the good stuff, and that's performing. We want our team to perform. We want it to start making progress on that project. We want it to start really showing enrichment and growth and empowerment. So that's where the grit happens. That's where we're getting the work done. So that's your performing stage. Some teams will really, really excel. If you pick them well and they get along well and they're motivated and they're committed to that project, you may move to what's called transforming. And transforming is a really strong commitment to the team where the goal may be to do A, B, and C, but this team is really good, solid, and dedicated. So much so that they're going to do A, B, C, D, and E. They can do more than what was expected of them. So they can really grow and enrich that. So some teams won't transform, some really can't transform. But when you have a team that's super motivated, it's amazing what you can get from them. And the final stage is adjourning. That's where the teams are going to dissolve and go their own separate ways. You should have some sort of celebratory thing, whether that be just a congratulations, final notes, talking about the success of the team. But rather than just not meeting anymore, there should be a conclusion to that team. The other thing that happens with teams is teams need strong leaders. And the leadership role in team can be a little bit tricky. Typically, it's going to be one person, and that's going to be the coordinator. It doesn't mean that they are the master of all the skills, but the one person that everybody coordinates to, who communicates, who is responsible for meeting notes and agendas and making sure that that team meets on a regular basis, that type of thing. So it needs a strong leader who can do all those things. That doesn't mean that leader has to be the expert in everything. You want your subject experts to bring their expertise forward. So it is frequent that that leader may say, person A headed up this report or gathered this information or is our expert in this particular thing. And you transfer that leadership quality, that leadership position to person A to talk about or to bring that subject matter excellence into the project. And then you would take back that leadership for that coordination purposes. So it's not that person A has to share everything with you and then you share it with the team. It's that person A shares it with the team and that we all contribute and everybody can see everyone's talents. That's really important. There's a couple things that you can do to establish really good leadership and get your team invested in you. One of them is to assign or elect a leader. Right away, we need to decide who is the person who's in charge, who's responsible for this. Assigned leaders are sometimes done by the workplace, but when a team gets to pick their own leader and that leader accepts that responsibility, that's really powerful too because you've invested in that leader. Sometimes you don't have that luxury. The second thing is that the leader should participate in the teams. It's really important that the leadership is part of the team, not that they just come in and make demands and check in. They should be part and an active member of that team. The leader should serve as a team motivator. maybe should be in a supportive role, in a non-judgmental role, and really help to motivate and keep that team on task. And the leader needs to manage conflicts when they occur. When you have teams, when you have people that are really smart and really talented, you're going to have conflicts. That's part of it. So how do you help work those conflicts out and for the betterment of the whole team? Sometimes people can do it on their own. Sometimes they need a little help. How do you pick the right team? You hear me keep talking about a team. There is a we in team. It's very important that everybody work together. And a big part of that is finding the right people for that team. So the first thing is to really understand what are the demands of the project. Picking the person that can contribute the time that's needed to the team. Somebody who has the right talent, the right skills, the right knowledge, whatever it is that you need, and the time and the availability to contribute to the team. So you don't want somebody who's working on a different shift that can't contribute or who doesn't know what they need to know to bring forward to the team. So you want the right players that you pick from there. You want to also consider things like attitude. If somebody does not work well with others, they probably won't be a great person on your team. So who works well with others, who is non-judgmental, who's open to hearing others and being part of that team. A third element is to secure the skills you need. That's really important as well. You need to have the right talent to get to the answers you need. To seek a strong knowledge base. So people who are committed and have information or know about the project. So they're familiar with it and they have something at stake. And finally, you want to be aware of any existing animosities. If you have people that don't get along already, or teams that are in conflict with each other, or individuals who simply don't like each other, then you don't want them on the team together, because that animosity can spread and it can create a toxic team. So picking the right players is really, really important. Also important is picking the right size of your team. Typically, you want to go with smaller is better. Teams that are too large are difficult to communicate with, and there's a lot of other agendas, and people break off into subgroups instead of being one part of the team. You've got subgroups going on, and it can be very difficult to manage and frequently loses its momentum. So typically you want to, it depends on the project, of course, and you may still have a solid team and may even bring an expert in for a day or two, but they're not part of the team if necessary. Typically, the ideal team member grouping is usually 5 to 10. Smaller is better for communication purposes, but think 5 to 10 people on a team when possible. If you're meeting cyberly, if you're leading through technology, then sometimes those teams can be a little bit bigger, and that's okay. But you don't want to go past 20. Of course, again, it depends on the project and how long it's there, but you want to make sure that you have a good group in there. You also remember that size will affect the communication and the effectiveness of that communication, which in turn affects your team. It is important that your groups are deliberate and that they discuss or debate the topic. And so if you have 20, 30, 40 people, sometimes everybody doesn't get a chance to be heard, and they may feel like they're in the background and they're not really getting a choice to voice what they have to say. Virtual teams, again, can be a little bit larger, but it's still important that they're managed well. And if your team is high intensity and requires quick responses, always go with the smaller to make sure that you can get the responses you need in a timely manner. What are some of those common team roles that you might see? Well, one is the leader. Who's the leader of the pack? Who's the one that's the coordinator? Who's responsible? Another role you might see is what we call a doer. These are the people that would be taking on the tasks and doing them. The next ones are going to be your thinkers. They tend to be the specialist or the subject area specialist, people who have a certain knowledge base that they can share, and then everybody can work from there. And then somebody that's a socializer, somebody who's really good with interpersonal skills, somebody who's there to coordinate, smooth, bring things together, kind of the glue of the group. And sometimes you have determined roles. These are going to be when the team leader or the management team has assigned Johnny's going to be in the group and this is what Johnny's going to do. So sometimes you don't have that flexibility within the group. But within the group, you're definitely going to need people who think, people who do, and sometimes you may take on more than one role. And that's okay. That depends on the size of the group as well. Again, storming is a regular part of the process. It does happen to teams as they learn to work together. and you don't want to be afraid of storming, you don't want to be afraid of conflict, but you do want to effectively work through it. Think of a real storm. You get wet, you'll get through it, but don't stand in it. Walk through it and get to the next spot. That's what you want to do. You don't just want to stand in it and go, heck, it's raining here. What are you going to do about it? How are you going to get through? So there's a couple of things that you can do that will help you. So one of those first things to do is to define the basic courtesies. We return emails within 24 hours. We return phone calls. We speak with respect. We are non-judgment zone. Whatever those courtesies are that you expect from everyone, that will help. Second is to outline the operating procedures. People may have their own agendas, their own egos, a lot of stuff they're bringing to the table. This is what our purpose is. This is what we need to do. We may look at other things, we may consider adding other things, but this is our primary purpose. Helping that team in the beginning focus on that. They can grow later, but they're not ready to grow yet until they've completed the storming process. Third is to agree on how to make decisions. So you want to be wary of things like majority rules all the time, because if they have groups or cliques, it can cause problems. So what is the way that we're going to examine information? We're all going to bring it forward, we're going to look at it in advance, we're all going to be heard, whatever that is, so that every team member can contribute, but that there is a process when people don't agree on the answer. You need everybody to commit to communication and open and regular communication. And finally, you have to find a format for that communication that everybody can agree on. So if you're sending messages and nobody's getting them, then you're not going to be very effective with that. So all of those things will help you to get through that storming process into a more normalized group and area. So hopefully that was helpful. Come right back. I've got a few more tips for you on Unit B, and I look forward to seeing you soon.